Millions of educated, hard-working people eagerly sign massive loan documents every single day, even though these exact loans will mathematically trap them in a cycle of exhausting, high-pressure labor for the rest of their lives. So why does the habit of taking on crushing debt never disappear? Picture a perfectly normal Saturday afternoon. You are standing in a stadium wearing a cap and gown, holding a very expensive university degree. The crowd is clapping. A few years later, you are standing at an altar paying for a beautiful, incredibly lavish wedding. The cameras are flashing. A few years after that, you are sitting at a heavy oak table in a real estate office, signing a 30-year mortgage for a sprawling suburban house. The smell of fresh paint is in the air. Your parents are bursting with pride. Your friends are cheering. You feel incredibly responsible. You are hitting all the traditional milestones of adulthood. But a brilliant, entirely invisible trap has just been executed right in front of you. You think you're building a successful, secure life, but actually you are suffocating your own future. We are taught from childhood that there are two completely different kinds of debt. Bad debt is credit cards, sports cars, and reckless gambling. Good debt is student loans, weddings, and primary homes. We are told that borrowing massive amounts of money for these socially approved assets is always a smart move. We believe that leveraging our future to achieve these milestones is the ultimate proof that we have finally made it. But what if the most dangerous financial mistakes are not the ones society condemns? What if the most devastating financial mistakes are the ones society violently applauds? People disagree about this. If you ask traditional financial advisors, they'll tell you that taking out loans for education and homeownership is the absolute bedrock of the middle class. They argue it's the only way everyday people can build long-term wealth. Some economists argue the opposite. They claim that the concept of good debt is a highly sophisticated marketing campaign meticulously designed to turn young, ambitious professionals into permanent indentured servants. Here's where people are split. Is taking on massive debt for a life milestone a smart investment, or is it a psychological cage? People don't make bad money decisions. They respond to the environment around them. And your environment aggressively trains you to crave societal validation. You want your family to be proud. You want your coworkers to respect you. You harbor a deep, unspoken need to look like a highly successful adult to people you barely even know. So you use massive amounts of leverage to buy the appearance of success. You take on a $50,000 student loan, a $30,000 wedding loan, and a $500,000 mortgage. But the real reason this habit destroys lives is much stranger. It's because we fundamentally confuse maximum leverage with maximum success. Look at your responsible debt from a completely different economic position. The global banking system doesn't actually want you to borrow money for a flat-screen television. The margins are far too small and the risk of default is too high. The global banking system wants you to borrow money for your identity. When you borrow for a degree or a house, you are not just buying a product, you are buying a piece of your ego. And to secure that piece of ego, you legally hand over the first 40 hours of your labor every single week for the next 30 years directly to a massive financial institution. Your intense craving for validation is their absolute greatest revenue stream. You look incredibly wealthy to your neighbors, but mathematically you are bleeding monthly cash flow. Because your overhead is so high, you can never change careers. You cannot take a pay cut to pursue a passion, you cannot start a business, and you cannot walk away from a toxic boss. You are completely stripped of your freedom. You have eagerly put on a pair of golden handcuffs, completely ignoring how heavy they are, simply because society tells you the handcuffs look beautiful. The biggest financial advantage isn't intelligence, it's which game you're playing. The middle class is playing a game of social approval. They willingly trap themselves in high-pressure leverage because they believe chronic financial anxiety is just a normal, unavoidable part of the modern human experience. They spend decades quietly drowning in payments, convinced that they are doing exactly what they are supposed to be doing. But long pause, the wealthy play a completely different game. They play a game of absolute mobility. They know that a high-pressure debt load fundamentally limits your choices. They know that true wealth is not the square footage of your house or the prestige of your degree. True wealth is the ability to wake up on a Tuesday morning and walk away from a bad deal. Let's slowly reveal the invisible forces holding this entire machine together. The incentives of the banking and education sector require you to believe that taking on debt is a moral virtue. If young adults suddenly refused to borrow money for expensive degrees, universities would collapse overnight. Their survival depends entirely on your willingness to mortgage your future. The structures of the modern economy are meticulously designed to make these massive life purchases impossible to afford with cash. The system places the milestones just far enough out of reach, forcing you onto a bridge of credit. The social pressures of modern culture demand that you hit these milestones on a strict schedule. You feel a ticking clock of anxiety in your 20s and 30s, a quiet terror that if you do not buy the house or throw the wedding, you are falling behind your peers. The probabilities dictate a ruthless, undeniable reality. Once you sign the paperwork for a massive, socially approved loan, human inertia guarantees you will simply put your head down, go to work, and pay the interest for the rest of your natural life. The system relies on you chasing the milestones. The people who wake up at 45 years old, drowning in good debt and feeling utterly suffocated, did not fail the system. They followed the system perfectly. They did exactly what the economy required them to do in order to function smoothly. They absorbed the debt, they bought the milestones, and they became highly compliant, entirely trapped workers. They traded their absolute freedom for the temporary applause of the crowd. Wealth is often less about effort and more about position. If you position your entire life around achieving the milestones that society demands, your effort will constantly be drained by the lenders who financed the journey. You will spend decades feeling a chronic, low-grade panic, believing that the heavy weight on your chest is just the cost of growing up. You will spend your entire life working for the bank while genuinely believing you are working for yourself. But if you step out of the illusion, the entire dynamic flips. You realize that true success does not require a massive loan. You stop confusing societal approval with actual security. You recognize that borrowing money to impress people who are also secretly drowning in debt is a devastating financial mistake. The hidden rule of the modern economy is that the most dangerous traps are never painted red, they are painted gold. When you finally understand this, the pressure completely evaporates. You realize that the ultimate flex of adulthood is not looking highly responsible to a loan officer. The ultimate flex is actually being free.